but it's much more than that too. So we have like over 35 years of alumni. We have lunches with speakers on different topics. Like this fall, we're doing, thank you, the Indian Child Welfare Act on one, and post conviction exonerations for another lunch, and annual symposium. There's a lot of networking among faculty and students, alumni. And I also wanted to emphasize that it's also not the only public interest fellowship, or it's just a part of the public interest community at Brooklyn, so which is a really robust community. So I'm sure you'll hear from some of the fellows, but sometimes people apply more than once. Like it takes 2 or even 3 times sometimes until they get it, but there's other sources of funding too. But we'll talk more about the application and also in Q&A, but also feel free to reach out to any of us, and maybe in particular Danielle and Jackie in the Center, Public Interest Center, Service Center, sorry, with questions. But I wanted to turn it over to Maria to talk a little bit about the application.
Hi, everyone. So I'll be pretty brief as well, but the application process involves like a short form application plus a letter and your resume. And after a small committee of faculty members and current fellows will review all those applications and decide who to interview, and then invite people for interviews. The main thing I want to say is that both for the letter or the essay that you write in your application and in your interview when you're responding to questions, like, you know, we do want to hear in some detail like why you're interested in public interest work, and if you can make connections between experiences you've had in the past, whether it's in the legal related fields or not, even if it's just personal life experience, you know, anything you can tell us that helps us understand why you're really interested in public interest work. That's what's most helpful to the people reviewing the applications and interviewing you. So that's sort of my biggest piece of advice. I also would note that in the fall, when we go through the selection process, we do give priority to 2Ls because it's sort of their last chance to get the Sparrow Fellowship. So if you're a 1L, like, please apply. We do select 1Ls as well, but don't be discouraged if you're not selected this fall, because next fall when you're a 2L, then you have a much better chance. And Danielle Sorkin has fantastic advice for all the people applying for the Sparrow Fellowship.
Yeah, and I was just going to say briefly that public interest for the Sparrow Fellowship does not include government work like prosecutors' offices and other government work. I mean, if you have a question about it, you can ask Danielle, because sometimes there might be like the Environmental Protection Agency, but generally it doesn't include government work. There are other fellowships that do, but it's generally sort of civil or criminal legal services for low-income communities, or international as well.
And I would just like to add that, you know, unlike when you're an intern spur, you have the services of the Public Service Law Center to assist you with your application. You can meet with us. We can help you with your essays. We can help you fix up your resume and maybe highlight your public service work a little bit clearer. And also, if you applied again, I would definitely encourage you to apply as an intern, and either you've got an interview and you didn't get it, or you think you can get an interview. I would still encourage you to apply again, and definitely use the resources of our office. We know what the committee is looking for. We also have a lot of experience in editing these kinds of statements. It can really help you best articulate your ideas. So, basically, you can just set up an appointment with us sort of after this program at publicservice@brooklaw.edu. You just let us know you have a draft of your Sparrow application, you'd like somebody to help you, and we can meet with you to do that. I'll also cover things that will be helpful to you for your Sparrow application in our resume and cover letter workshop. Many of the same principles that I talk about there will apply to your Sparrow application. So I would recommend coming to that, which is next Wednesday at lunchtime. So definitely, either me or Jackie will be happy to meet with you.
So we're going to hear about, there's a huge range of experience. These are just some of the Sparrow Fellows from last summer, but I guess we'll start, or I don't know if anyone has to leave early if you need to, no. Okay, so staff. Yeah, I'm not sure they're working, but
Okay, then
if
I'll
they're not, then just,
Sure.
no, because they do work.
Thank you so much. Hi. Hello. My name is Steph Pettit. I'm a 2L, and this last summer was my Sparrow summer. I worked at Mobilization for Justice, which is a nonprofit in the city that does a variety of civil legal work, but I work specifically in the mental health law project. The reason I chose mobilization in this unit specifically was because it's kind of unique in some ways. It's like the intersection of disability, housing, justice, a lot of other law that's related to just mental health disability generally. So I was able to do a lot of diverse kinds of work, client work, research, memos, drafting some litigation, and some examples of the kind of work that I did. I worked on a Social Security disability appeal at the ALJ level, at the administrative law judge level. We were trying to appeal a denial for someone with a mental health disability. I did a name change in civil court in Manhattan for someone with mental health related trauma. I did a lot of memos on Social Security disability and the regulations and the way that they're applied by people that work in the SSA office. Did some housing work. So it was a range of work, and something I really liked about MFJ that's not already obvious is because it's a multifaceted legal services organization. They were very open to letting you learn about, helping you learn about other areas and how they intersect. They were also very open to suggestions. So if I said, for instance, what I said was I really would like to do prisoners' rights stuff, they gave me some projects that related to incarceration and mental health. So those are just some things I really liked about MFJ. Yeah, talk to me.
Yeah, for any of us, I'm saying blanket that you could reach out to anyone afterwards in terms of applying to Sparrow, but also just more broadly public interest work and the organizations they worked at.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everybody. My name is Caroline Golub, and for my Sparrow summer, this past summer, I was at Manhattan Legal Services in the Immigration Advocacy Unit. Manhattan Legal Services is one of the arms of Legal Services NYC, which provides free legal services to indigent clients across the city. So a lot of I thought I had a really great opportunity to work on a variety of projects while I was there. I got to do some asylum work, some U visa, which is visas that you might qualify for if you've been a victim of a crime in the United States, and even some more straightforward naturalization type work. I had the opportunity to do a lot of research into country to conditions and different legal issues facing my clients. I also had the opportunity to draft a couple of motions, like a motion for prosecutorial discretion, and as well as work on an asylum brief for one of my clients who was seeking protection because of his sexual orientation from Russia, Ukraine. I chose Manhattan Legal Services because I wanted to be doing direct services for my first summer. I'm a 2L right now. My background was more in the programmatic, policy research arena, so I really wanted the opportunity to work directly with clients. And so being able to meet with clients and do that intake was really important to me. So I just want to say really briefly, apart from my internship this summer, I and a couple of other Sparrows, including Abby right here, worked on something called the Community Justice Collective, which was an 8-week program over the summer, where we had meetings every week on various public interest law topics centered around bringing community voices to the forefront for facilitation and learning. And that was a really incredible experience. And one of the best things about it is, even though it comes out of SPARE, it was formerly known as the SPARE Summer Theory Institute, it's open to everyone. So you don't have to be a SPARE fellow to participate, and it's a great way to get involved if, for example, you apply the first year and you don't get it. So just wanted to do a quick plug for that.
That's great.
Hi everyone, my name is Bianca Lee. I'm a 2L. this past summer, my spare summer, I worked at the Fair Housing Justice Center. It's a nonprofit civil rights organization in Queens that fights housing discrimination in New York City and surrounding counties. I am like very drawn to housing law as sort of like the place where I want to focus, either like immediately after graduation or just like as a career path at some point, because I think it's like so intimately connected to other forms of marginalization. I think I got to see that very intimately at my internship this summer. For example, I did a research memo on the protections that exist against discrimination for undocumented renters, because we had been receiving a lot of complaints from people who are undocumented about experiencing housing discrimination, landlords refusing to rent to them because of their immigration status, even though that is a protected class under the New York City human rights law. But our office had not as many resources as they would like to sort of address that issue, because they just didn't really know what the legal landscape was. And so I was happy that like the thing that I had written was going to be used by the office as sort of a guide going forward. I did a lot of intake with complainants, so here, me being like the first voice they heard from the Fair Housing Justice Center, and sort of guiding them through filing a case, if we felt that there was a case to be filed, bringing the intake files to meetings with the rest of the Fair Housing Justice Center to determine what the next steps would be. Did some policy work where we met with Senator Julia Salazar and her her legal coordinator, advocating for a bill that would add criminal legal history as a protected class under the New York City human rights law. So people who have a conviction record, landlords could not legally use that as a basis for discrimination. At this point in New York City, that is allowed. So that was really interesting. I did some other research on the protections that exist against housing discrimination for sex workers in New York City. What I liked about the internship was that, yeah, as you can probably tell, there was a great mixture of work, and it was very self-directed. Like, I said that I wanted to write about sex workers' protections, and my supervisor was like, okay, go for it. So that was really cool. And I think in terms of like whether it met my expectations for a 1L internship, definitely. I think I didn't know anything about housing discrimination or really housing law generally, and I came away from it knowing a lot. Yeah, so I had a really pleasant summer, and I am fortunate to have had the opportunity to have like met other fellows and been a Spare fellow. Yeah, feel free to come talk to me about housing or anything else related to Spare.
Can y'all? Okay. I'm Abby. I'm a 3L. I was a bit of an older student when I started at BLS, and I didn't have a prior career in public interest, and so I applied my first year and didn't get the fellowship, and then I applied as a 2L and did get it. So don't lose hope if you apply this year and it doesn't work out for you. I spent last summer at the Legal Aid Society in their criminal defense practice doing trial-level public defender work. My previous summer, I was at the Center for Appellate Litigation doing appeals, criminal defense work. I won't go into that, but I'm happy to talk about it. They're very different. Appeals work is very writing and research-centered with some direct services, whereas trial work is very heavy on the direct services. This past summer, I spent a lot of time shadowing my supervisors, writing motions to suppress, things like that. And then a lot of time in arraignments where you get to learn how to interview clients, stand up on the record, those types of things. I'm staying on at Legal Aid this semester in the drug part, and then doing standard kind of CDP stuff as well. I came into law school not knowing what type of public interest work I wanted to do, but criminal law sort of always interested me. You know, I'm interested in abolition as well, and so public defense kind of fits into, you know, wanting to do direct services work, and you know, in the area of law that I am just academically interested in. Legal Aid has been around the block for quite some time. They're the oldest oldest public defender in New York. which has its pros and its cons. It's a pretty big organization, but there are a lot of really thoughtful and talented attorneys. And if you sort of make the effort to raise your hand for projects, there's a lot to be done. I'm really happy with legal aid. The public defender area is a little is going through a lot of changes, I think both on sort of the government side and the public defender side, that is creating sort of just a lot of kind of inter-office tension. So you kind of have to be aware that you're going to be exposed to maybe not so great sides, but if you want to do public defense work, it's a great place to land, and I'm happy to talk about any of that. And I'll plug CJC too. It was one of my favorite things I've ever done in law school. So.
I definitely want to hear about the internal conflict a little bit, because I'm currently applying to public defense offices. So my name is Nicole. I'm a 3L. Similarly, I came to law school. I started law school when I was older. I also did not get accepted into SPARE the first time that I applied. Even though I was genuinely interested in public interest work, I think I really messed up the interview. But I also think I messed up the interview the second time, but I got accepted. So I think if you have an actual genuine interest in public interest, they'll be able to recognize that. So I encourage you to keep trying. And I really enjoy being part of a community that enjoys this or cares about the same issues that I care about. So basically what I did is for my second L year, I was nervous about applying for internships, and I kind of just wanted to get it over with. So the first job fair that was available, I started doing it, and that was Equal Justice Works, and I just applied to any state. And I made the decision that the first state where I liked the interviewers, I would basically just accept that position. And that happened to be with Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh, which is...
From there.
Oh, are you? Wow, yeah. And I had never been there before, but I just felt like I connected with the interviewers. So I told them if they accepted me, I would go. They did. The program was amazing. A big part of the reason I think it was amazing is because it was a recruitment effort. So I think when offices really care about wanting to recruit good people, they put a lot of effort into their internship programs. So you might want to pay attention to that. And the internship experience was different. The culture over there is very different. I'm from New York City, so it was just kind of navigating that. But the part that I appreciated the most was that the attorneys were really good at what they did. So for me, it was just like an opportunity to learn from the best. And I think part of it is like the legal system in Pennsylvania is a little different. It's very sink or swim, and it's like whatever. So they have to be good. But that's basically what I got out of it. And my last plug-in is for Danielle, because she's amazing. And if you like are genuinely interested in public interest, I don't want to overburden her with work, but I definitely recommend reaching out to her or Jackie. They're just so amazingly helpful.
Hello, I'm Meredith. I am a 2L. This summer I was interning at Staten Island Legal Services, which is the smallest office of NYC Legal Services. It was really great to be in a small office because it felt like a more tight-knit community, and all the attorneys kind of knew and worked with each other. Although I was in the education unit and my supervisor was the only education attorney in that office, so that was kind of interesting. There weren't other education interns, but a lot of the work this summer was writing due process complaints on behalf of students in New York City public schools. Students with disabilities are entitled to something called free and appropriate public education, and if they are not getting that, it's a constitutional issue. It's also an issue under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So a lot of what we did were tuition reimbursement or pre-reimbursement challenges and suspension proceedings. So if a school can't accommodate a student with a disability, they have to pay for tuition at a private or a non-public school that can. But the DOE won't just do that. Parents have to file a lawsuit to get it. And then the other thing is that students with disabilities who are suspended are entitled to something called a manifestation determination review, where the school has to consider whether the incident that resulted in the suspension was related to the student's disability. And if it is, then that student can't be suspended. But a lot of the times with low-income families, they are not listened to by the school district. They're written off as bad parents or that they're disruptive, and their children are just not given the same care and concern as other students in the school district. A lot of it also has to do with language access for limited English proficient parents. We were involved in an ongoing lawsuit that had been settling with the New York City Department of Education for 3 or 4 years. You can read about it in the news, but the schools were failing to provide translation and interpretation services to parents, and as a result, they were not given the opportunity to meaningfully participate in their children's education. There were also a number of instances where children had like medical emergencies at school, and parents were contacted and they were not contacted with like an interpreter, so they had no idea what was going on when their child was like at a hospital or something, which is very serious. So I was involved in a lot of cases on that. And I also was sitting in on meetings with like school staff about individualized education programs, as well as meetings with parents. One thing that I learned is a lot of the times, especially with like parent-teacher meetings, is that parents just like to have an attorney present because they feel like it holds school staff more accountable, which is especially something that's important for low-income parents, because they just aren't listened to in the school system. So that was my work. And then I also wanted to add, for applying to the Sparrow Fellowship in general, I was accepted for my 1L year, but don't be discouraged regardless of your year about whether you have too much public interest experience, because I graduated in like spring 2020, right when the pandemic started, and I couldn't find a job that was really in public service because of that. Like I started working in retail, but I think the folks who interviewed me could tell that it was something that I was passionate about, and honestly talking about the fact that like I worked in retail during COVID, which was difficult because of a lot of things, I think that translates well to public service and just like being able to deal with people in high stress situations. So yeah, don't be discouraged if you don't have like, I know some people come to law school with very impressive resumes, but there are different paths to public interest, and what really matters is that you're passionate about it.
I just wanted to highlight that, and also what Professor Termini and everyone has sort of said about their different paths and different ways of choosing. Like Nicole's is different than other people's way of choosing what organization and what they want to go into, because there really isn't, and we've especially been mindful in recent years, and the committee is made up of current fellows and faculty members who interview it. That people, because there's also equity issues, beyond COVID around, sometimes people haven't had the opportunity to do public interest or had to work in it. So the committee really understands that, and it's really just expressing your passion about it in the essay. So sorry to interrupt. I go back to Veronica.
Hi everyone. Sorry, my voice is weird. I'm a little under the weather. So if you have any trouble understanding anything, just like ask me and I'll repeat. I'm a 3L. Truthfully, Sparrow kind of fell under my radar my second year of law school. I didn't really know too much about it. So you guys are all like here and present. You guys are better than me in that aspect. Like you guys have that on your radar, so that's good. Of course, like all my colleagues have said, I encourage everyone to apply, regardless of whether or not you think it's going to work out or your like public interest background. I applied my second year, obviously, and thankfully I got accepted, and I love the group, and I love how, like Nicole said, that there's a group in the law school that's very passionate and like will go out of their way to make sure that you're doing the work that you want to do and you're happy with what you want to do post law school. Last summer I was with New York County Defender Services doing criminal defense work. I had done a couple of criminal defense and public defense organization like internships in the past with the summer. My first summer of law school, I did an internship with Neighborhood Defender Services of Harlem, and there are stark differences between the different organizations, and I guess you would have to kind of do those internships to see for yourself. But I guess I'll speak on New York County. Similar to what Abby was saying, it's like a hands-on kind of you're supervising a lot of things. So you're required to supervise arraignments, client interviews, different hearings. And in addition to that, it's just a constant flow of like research assignments, or you guys are going to be on or if you were to do this internship, it's like a listserv, and the attorneys kind of send out work. Is anyone interested in this topic? Would anyone like to write a memo on this topic? And I like that because it was flexible, and it wasn't like, this is this assignment, you have to do, like, it's due in 2 hours, get it done. It was more like let's talk about it, like, what's your schedule, like, are you interested in this topic, or would you be more interested in the topic of your colleague? Do you want to work with them? So they're very flexible in that aspect. I don't know about the rest of everyone else, but my internship was in person. It was the first time I did public defense work in person since starting law school. So to me, that made a huge difference, because the way they have the office set up is all of the interns are in like this like one little area. So you have a question, you don't have to like email someone, then wait like 4 or 5 hours to get a response. You just turn around and ask the person next to you, or you walk up to the attorneys in the office, because everyone's like on the same floor. So I would say that I loved, like, just for lack of a more professional word, like the vibe of the office. It was very like open and, you know, amiable, and just like not like not 100% professional in the aspect of like, you could have casual conversation, you could crack a joke here and there, you can go out for drinks or for lunch or for dinner or whatever after arraignments. And I think that speaks a lot to the organization, and it does have an effect on the work that you end up producing, because you're comfortable asking questions, you're comfortable reaching out whenever you're confused, or speaking about a topic that might not necessarily be a part of like a research assignment. You're just curious about something. So I loved how the office really encouraged like an open space and a comfortable space. I will say that New York County also, that was the first time I really had a lot of trial experience. Typically, or my other internships, they'll be like, oh, this case is set for trial, and then a couple weeks after, they'll be like, oh, never mind, the case was dismissed. So, which is great, because the client doesn't have to go through that traumatic experience, but I never really had that experience with regards to trial until I went to New York County, and one of the first assignments that I had to do was basically shadow my supervisors for a trial. It was assault on the 2nd degree. And so I watched everything from jury selection to jury verdict. They had me draft a trial order of dismissal. I got to meet with the client and his family and his very cute child. And it was just like a very eye-opening experience, because you read a lot in law school, you study, you take these exams, you know how bad the criminal legal system is, how necessary public defense is, but nothing compares to seeing it in person and seeing it actually play out and having an effect on someone's life. So I would say, if you're interested in public defense, criminal defense, definitely check them out. They're a great organization. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Hi all, I'm Jamie Sheever. I'm a 2L inspirer, and this past summer I worked at Pine Tree Legal Assistance in Maine. So it's an organization that provides all the civil legal services to the state of Maine. There are 6 offices, and I actually worked across all 6 of them throughout the summer. And I think practicing in a rural setting is something I'm really interested in doing after law school, and providing services in an area that doesn't have very many services. Prior to law school, I worked in intimate partner violence legal services with low-income folks. I'm still very interested in that, but this summer I got to work in sort of absolutely everything. So the organization I worked with used like a holistic model that they were piloting. So we worked with one client on every issue they were experiencing. So I did Indigenous peoples work, I did farm workers work, I did property rights with a spike fence that included domestic violence and horses. I did eviction prevention, education, homelessness intervention, so really just like the whole gamut. But I think I would like to speak more to despair in general. I'm someone who took a lot of time off between college and law school to figure out what I wanted to do, and I was a gender studies major and was really interested in social justice causes, but I didn't know what sort of toolkit I wanted to use in my professional life to get there. And I think that every so often in my 1L year, I would waver on like, why am I in law school? Like, is the law the most effective tool to do the work that I want to be doing? And I think being a Spare Fellow like always reaffirms it. We have lunch every, I think it's like 2 weeks or once a month. Yeah, once a month. And every time anyone from this program speaks about what they did or their passions or what they're doing right now, I think it reaffirms that like why I'm at this law school and why I'm paying tuition and why I'm here. So I think that just like applying to this program, even if you don't get in the first time, is really a sense of community, and it's really a sense of just like belonging when law school is so challenging and people can be really competitive or really corporate and you have loans to pay. So I think Spare really just like brings you back to your center of like why you came and what you can do with this degree.
That's very well put. I feel like, oh, I should use this one.
Oh, no, you can use that one. You can use both.
I can come to you in stereo. Hi, I'm Liz Mayer. I'm also a 2L. And just to sort of echo what Jamie was just saying, I have found being in the Spare program to be incredibly inspiring and invigorating too. It's really been incredible to hear what other people are interested in, and it really has kind of raised my spirits at times when law school can flag your spirits in a big way. I also took a lot of time before I came back to law school, and I've always been interested in healthcare. So, and I wanted to work on issues around accessing healthcare and healthcare equity. So my Spare summer, this past summer, I was at an organization called Community Health Advocates. It's part of the Community Service Society of New York, which is one of the oldest nonprofits in the city. And Community Health Advocates was tasked as part of the Affordable Care Act to sort of be New York State's central place for dealing with healthcare related issues. So they serve as a resource for anyone who's having issues with accessing the care they need or accessing more care, trying to figure out, there's a huge component of it that's about just educating people about what they're eligible for and making sure people are signed up for services. But within Community Health Advocates, we really were working on just helping people work through problems they were having. I really liked it. I really wanted to do direct services because I too had done a lot that was on the policy kind of larger side of things, and it really, I had a pretty significant, I felt to me, roster of individual clients that I was working with, and some of what I was doing was writing. It was a great opportunity to sort of learn how to craft persuasive/angry letters, and I did a lot of that. But sometimes I was writing memos, complaints, appeals, and other times it was really just a question of getting on the phone and really trying to problem solve. And I think that too was great to see how in a legal context you really can be helping people solve a problem, even if it's just getting on the phone or trying to untangle a very complex set of concerns and questions that involve a lot of acronyms and things that don't make sense. So I really got to do that. Also, I really enjoyed, it involved I got to do a lot of research. The cool thing for me is I learned a lot about insurance law and the insurance structures of New York State, but I also ended up doing a lot of medical research too, because as you craft these appeals, you have to really appeal. New York State's law in terms of getting appeals when you've been denied insurance is a demonstration of medical necessity. So I learned a lot about what that means, and then also to prove it, you really have to show. So not only was I looking up things on Westlaw, I was looking up things on PubMed too. So I was doing a lot of medical research, and for me, that was a bonus, not a downside. So I really liked sort of getting to do that piece of it too. I think honestly, legal writing from 1L year really helped me in my job this summer. I didn't think I was going to be talking about Iraq or crack or anything like that, but it definitely was a thing, and we used it. I'm actually working still. Even though the summer's over, I'm doing an external appeal letter to New York State, which is a process after you've gone to your insurance company and said, please, cover this, it is medically necessary. After they deny it in New York State, you are eligible to appeal to the state in a process that is kind of akin to doing another kind of appellate brief. You have to basically build on why the previous judgments were incorrect. You have to, again, prove medical necessity. So there's lots of exhibits, and you have to put together all kinds of background information and letters from the doctors. So it's been exciting to kind of work on that, and I've gotten the chance to get very sort of involved with a lot of clients on a really one-to-one level, which I thought was really great. And of course, as I think we can all say, once you are engaged with a client on that individual level, you get really passionate about trying to help them with whatever they're dealing with. So I'm hopeful that this appeal that I'm going to try to finish tomorrow is going to work. And we're it's a young woman who needs surgery that is clearly medically necessary, and the insurance company made a very narrow definition of what that is. So it's been great. I think anyone who's interested in health-related issues, this does get into the community health advocates, by its nature, gets into the weeds of, how insurance works and what the rules are. So it's definitely, there's a lot of stuff to dig into. But if you have any interest in those issues, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And like I said, I think being in Spare last year was a really incredible experience for me. And I didn't get to go to all the CJC events over the summer for various reasons, but that too was incredibly inspirational. So, yeah.
Hello, my name's Sophie. I'm a 2L. I was at Neighborhood Defender Services this past summer in the criminal defense practice. Veronica, we should chat. And I'm now at New York County Defender Services. So I also have thoughts about the structure of it all. Every org is different. I think as an intern, you come in and you can hear a lot of stuff that attorneys say to you and to other interns, but I think the intern class that I was at this summer, we were very mindful about tuning stuff out because people just say weird stuff. And it's really hard also in the public defense space because everyone, on some level you think is working for the same cause, but it's very jarring to come into a space and, people have differing views. But I did generally really enjoy my time this summer. I think the best part was shadowing my supervisor, who I really, really loved. Not everyone had a good relationship with their supervisor, which is also speaks to how you find your voice in your 1L summer to advocate for yourself. But I loved my supervisor, did a lot of arraignment shifts, could interview clients for the first time, their first contact sometimes with the criminal legal system, their first time interviewing with a lawyer. And it was hard to kind of gain trust. Here I am, a young gal interviewing you, like, why should you trust me? And I think that was a really important experience as well. Something that was also cool was, I don't know if y'all have heard the Bruin decision, Supreme Court case that codified the Second Amendment right to bear arms outside of the home. And so we worked a lot of drafting motion to dismiss templates, to dismiss predicate felony offender status. So if you've been tried and convicted of a felony level offense for possessing firearm outside the home, we were challenging that, saying that past conviction was unconstitutional now under the current structure of Second Amendment rights outside the home. And I think the 1L summer, in a number of ways, you can do anything, but I think something's really important is finding your footing as a lawyer, as a young lawyer, and finding out how you best advocate for yourself. Because, I had a supervisor, my fellow interns did as well, but people would just ignore us sometimes. And I think it's really hard in that space where you're like, this is a really important summer for me. This is my first time in a professional setting as a lawyer. And you need to advocate for yourself and talk to people and make sure you're getting what you need because, it's really important. And I learned so much just from that experience. But yeah, I did love it. I have so many thoughts. But if you have any questions, please feel free to chat. And love Spare. Some of my closest friends from school are here. And yeah.
Thank you all so much. So there's so much amazing advice and experience here. Let's start off with questions more generally about the program or application process, and then if there's time, we can also get specific about organizations. But again, please feel free if there's not time for that to follow up, or even if there is time to follow up with people afterwards. So
If we have a specific sector we want to go into of public interest, should we specify that in our essay, or should we just talk more generally about public sector?
Yeah, great question. So just sort of back to the earlier point, either way is fine. If you do know that you're interested in a specific sector, definitely talk about it. But the most important thing is sort of just your overall passion. So there are definitely people who come in, who are for my whole, since I was 10, I know I want to be a public defender. And then there's lots of people who might be I think I'm interested in this, immigration, but then I'm also interested in criminal law. And they're all, really intersecting and more offices are like taking a more holistic approach. So, because it's a long way of saying, if you do have an interest, definitely express it, but also don't feel like you're locked into it. And you can also say, I'm also interested in like, because we know that these communities, much more than when I practiced a really long time ago, or when I was graduating from law school. I mean, we know that the families in the criminal system also have like family defense, housing, immigration issues. It's all the same. So, but I did want to flag also that there is a space in the application for some organizations you're interested in. Definitely put a few down, but again, no one expects. Sometimes people really know because they've worked somewhere before or they whatever. That's great, but if you don't know, that's fine too. But just put a few down so that we have some sense that you've done a little bit of research in that area, but no one again is gonna like lock anyone into it. Anything else you guys want to add about that part of the application or the essay? Because you're all closer to it than me for sure. Yep.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to add, if you do express that you have a certain interest in your application and then you come to law school and find out it's something completely different, like, no one's gonna penalize that for you. Like, they're not gonna check on your application what you said you were interested in if you get an internship that's different than that. I wrote about something that I was very interested in my essay, and I thought it was something I wanted to pursue, but I changed my mind, and I didn't get in trouble for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. Other questions? Yeah.
Just logistically, where can we find the form application?
Oh yeah. So obviously there's copies here. It's I cannot begin to tell you. Oh, thank you. Oh, Marva, you're still here. Okay. So first of all, really, really important. As she just demonstrated, I thought you had left, but Marva Skeen is like the backbone. I was gonna say heart. Organizes, knows everything about the program. So really important to meet her and know her. So it's on BLS Connect, but where specifically? I mean, I've Googled it to find it, but it's on the SPARE webpage. If worse comes to worse, yeah, there's printed copies. No, but if worse comes to worse, honestly, you just Google Brooklyn Law School SPARE application. I think it would be under, what would it be under? Fellowships or something?
It's on the left. It's on the
under
left.
fellowship drop down. I'm sorry, it is a bit hard to navigate for sure, but it is up there. But if you have trouble finding it, and now you have
Allegedly. No, we did. We found it.
Yeah, and if you have trouble, contact Marva, and she knows everything. Sorry, I thought I saw one more hand up. No, okay, yeah.
Is there a word limit for the letter of recommendation?
I don't think so, right?
For the essay or for a letter of recommendation? I don't think so.
No, there's not.
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good question because sometimes there are, but no, there's not. And actually, just on that point, and we did change the application to reflect it, but I know an older one was up there that some people saw. So for 1Ls, it does talk about a faculty reference, but for 1Ls, we understand a lot of people aren't comfortable. If you are, and especially if it's like a smaller class or even a bigger class where you've spoken to the professor, like then, please feel free to put them down as well. But if you will certainly not be penalized if you don't put a faculty member down, because we know it's really early days and you have a lot of big classes. Yeah.
How many fellows are accepted for?
It's currently about 20. I don't know. It's currently about 20 for the full year, which includes the We Select fellows from the incoming students.
So there's some people who, when they apply to law school,
yeah. So it's about a third or a little more selected, in the late spring when they're coming in, and then the rest are selected in the fall, which is a combination of 1Ls and 2Ls.
So it's probably around 12, but we're not exactly, okay. It's definitely a competitive process. I was saying last night, one of the things that's amazing about BLS, and probably why so many of you are here, is that we have one of the best public interest law schools in the country. That also means that, it's tough to get things, but like you've heard, a lot of times people are persistent and get it. There's also other great fellowships, like Lisby and other ones too, but definitely, like we said, we do prioritize second years in this application, but there are always someone else who do get it, so definitely worth, applying no matter what.
Danielle, maybe.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted to say one small caveat, which is like the Debbie Downer, that's something that does sometimes weirdly happen as a 1L, that some 1Ls that if you've applied entering and you did get an interview and then you didn't get it, you still may not get an interview actually your second time because of whatever influx of 2L applications we might get, and we don't want you to feel like that means that your application was so much worse or feel negatively. It's just sort of, we do want to give the 2Ls that last opportunity to get into the program.
And many of them have applied
And many of
before
them
as
have
well,
applied
so.
as entering, it had the same situation as you were just in, so, it does create a little bit of awkwardness. I know how that must feel as a student, but we want you to know that just keep applying, and I know that's sort of,
But it really is
it does
true.
happen, and I just wanted to just let
Like,
you know.
well, I don't want to say for sure, but I think there's definitely lots of people who applied twice or 3 times, and I can't think of any who didn't, who were committed to public interest and didn't get it. So anyway, it's definitely something that sometimes takes a lot just because there's a big community here. Any other questions? Well, I guess also it could be more specific if people have, in different organizations or, interested in particular area. I guess I would just ask one thing, sorry, in our I know people have class, including me. But, I was gonna say, I know sometimes people, especially for first years, if you do apply and don't get it, or whatever, what things to do in terms of demonstrating your passion for public interest. Because like we talked about, coming in to law school, people have had different reasons for not being able to do or being able to do things, and the committee tries to weigh that. But second year, it's a little more like definitely looking at first year more, because then you all are in law school. So I don't know if people want to talk about pro bono projects. I will not call like I did before. Or other things, like things that you can do, because you can't do clinics in first year, but things that you can do to demonstrate a commitment to social justice in your first year.
I would just recommend the pro bono fair. It's just, that's the only way I knew of finding volunteer work.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great programs that don't have a big time commitment. And just going back to Meredith's point about parents wanting, I just know one because I worked with students a long time ago, setting it up is a suspension representation project, just to use one example. And literally, and it's with other law schools as well, like NYU and maybe some others, but having a student show up there literally has had a 90% success rate, just because the school is so often, I used to do schoolwork too, so often if they're not there, if someone's not there, they take advantage or don't follow the law, basically, especially for more marginalized communities. That's just one example. There's a lot of great ones.
Yeah, I would say pro bono work, or there are public interest sort of organizations, BLISB, NLG, just getting involved with student orgs as a delegate, or just working on projects that are interesting to you. And then I'm just talking about what I did. I'm what did I do? Because I got in as a 2L. And then having an internship your first summer that's public interest focused.
Other questions? Or Danielle, do you just want to flag PILC for a minute, or just talk about the timeline a little bit?
So the way that most of these students sort of found their placements is through a job fair called the PILC Fair. I think we mentioned it back at our one-hour program a few weeks ago. So the way that works is essentially you'll be coming to our program, our resume cover letter workshop on the 12th. Registration for the fair isn't until sort of the end of December, and that's really the biggest place where there's over 200 nonprofit and government agencies come, and they kind of collectively will recruit interns, and they are looking for 1Ls. They don't ask for transcripts. They know that you don't have them yet, so and there's a whole timeline. The deadline happens the second week of January. We do a ton of emailing and a ton of programming around it, so it's not something to worry about too much, but it is a great place to find an opportunity. So if you don't end up getting SPARE, it's a great place to find a public service internship.
Or even if you do get SPARE, because you
do,
find your own
yes.
internship. Yeah.
You do. And then, I think also just great to learn about what other organizations are out there. So that's really our sort of the kickoff to your summer job search is going to be that fair. There is stuff that happens later, but it's kind of a great place to just kind of get a lot of bang for your buck. Put in 20 applications, 30 applications, and see what happens. Someone's like, I did 17.
Someone yesterday said they did 85. I think
What? There are 85 places?
It was, I can't remember who it was.
I really am
It was,
I recommend it.
that was International.
And we teach you a whole method of how to work it down crazy, but there's a method to the madness, and it's actually not as bad as you think it is. So,
First year.
yeah, it's a great place to start, and also just
It's a good story to
about getting involved in the community of Brooklyn. I can't just say the gift of just showing up. There's free lunch at almost every single organization. If there's a topic you care about, the longer you sit somewhere, the more likely an upperclassman is going to notice you and ask you to do something. then sort of by accident, you're going to get involved, and basically with a free lunch involved. So I really recommend just constantly showing up to the free lunches, the student organizations, and just, it's not a huge time commitment, but literally just sit in the Immigration Law Society or NLG or any of the other organizations that are out there that have practice areas that you're interested in. And you'll slowly kind of get, you'll move out of the back row and start to move forward.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna flag yesterday, Brianna, who's a third year, and she didn't get the Spirit Fellowship the first time, and she was talking about how she applied to like 85. I mean, obviously that's a lot, but got rejected. She got rejected from them all. Anyway, and then ended up getting 2 amazing summer internships through other things, through like going to organizations. And she also has a very sort of niche thing, which is international human rights. But I just meant it was a great story that like it is, like people persevere and succeed. And now she has, had her sort of dream summer job and is applying for. So definitely, it doesn't have to take 85. That's might be a record, but I do think it's really important not to take like just one rejection, because everyone in public interest has had multiple rejections. It's just sort of the nature of the job. Like it's just, it happens all the time, and it's just sort of part of the process. But the jobs are obviously, as you've heard, so amazing and fulfilling.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would just echo showing up to things. I spoke to 4 people in my first semester of 1 year probably, and I brought a book to the lunch things because I'm awkward, and I got involved in a ton of stuff. And I think just like if you're shy and you don't speak to your professors and you don't go to office hours because you're a nervous human, showing up is like really all you need to do. I just really echo that sentiment.
So maybe I think that's probably time to end, but I just want to say thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.
And please follow up with any of us.